So Caitlin Clark's injury is something that is going to massively affect the WNBA.
Caitlin Clark's injury recently stunned the WNBA. It's not just about missing games. Players throughout the league are reportedly in a panic because they fear that this 2-week absence could cost them millions in future contract negotiations. The timing couldn't be worse, and the financial consequences are staggering. This might have a significant impact on women's basketball salaries. What impact do you think the injury to Caitlin Clark will have on the WNBA's next CBA/CBA? Please provide your predictions in the space provided below.
See, look, there's going to be financial impact in the teams for 2 weeks, but the long-term financial impact of this injury might actually be...
Let me explain why WNBA players are staying up late due to Caitlin Clark's quad injury. It's more than just missing a couple games. This has to do with the potential for millions of dollars to be lost in quickly approaching contract negotiations. The timing of this injury couldn't be worse for sportsmen who were looking for significant salary increases. Everyone is terrified in this situation. Caitlin Clark's quad strain will keep her out of action for roughly 2 weeks. In any other league, losing one player for 2 weeks wouldn't be catastrophic since the WNBA isn't a typical league and Caitlin Clark isn't a typical player. She is essentially this league's financial engine, as everyone knows. The first major problem was immediately brought on by the Washington Mystics' upcoming game against the Indiana Fever. They anticipated Caitlin Clark would sell out, so they moved this game from its original location to a larger arena, just like every other team in the league. They spent money on advertising, a new location, and hiring more staff since they expected large numbers.
Paying all this money, paying up for tickets, and at the end of the day, deciding to not go, all right? Calling the whole trip.
Caitlin Clark, though, is no longer taking part. And you know what happened? The price of tickets was halved overnight. The entire arena is still empty, and there are no sales. Many buy tickets to see Caitlin Clark rather than watch the Indiana Fever struggle without their best player. At last, WNBA leaders are being made to confront this harsh reality. The comparison to Lionel Messi of Major League Soccer is accurate in this instance. When Messi isn't playing for Inter Miami, fans go berserk. For spending more to see the one player who really counts, they want reimbursement, refunds, or anything else. Because they see that fans feel exploited when Messi is sidelined, MLS teams have begun offering free tickets to subsequent games, free refreshments, and other perks. But this is the crucial difference. MLS publicly acknowledges that Messi is more than just a member of their league. They don't behave as if American football evolved organically. Messi's appeal has become the foundation of their business strategy. On the other hand, the WNBA has been completely unaware of Caitlin Clark's impact.
In a split instance, all of it can change. If this injury does anything, it should be a wake-up call to the WNBA, the Players Association, the team owners, that just like that, all this fanfare, all this interest, all this newfound attention on the league can disappear.
The management of UNBA has spent the last 2 years trying to convince everyone that the league's growth is sustainable and natural. Stories about how women's basketball is finally getting the credit it deserves, how each player is contributing to this growth, and how the league has improved financially have all been highlighted. But eventually, Caitlin Clark's injuries will show how ridiculous everything is. Over the following 2 weeks, everyone involved will be given a hard reality check. When Caitlin Clark isn't playing, we'll see just what WNBA attendance and viewership look like. Based on historical statistics, the numbers will also be horrifying. We are talking about games that might not even be seen by 200,000 people on television. This leads us to the WNBA players' true panic. The upcoming talks for a collective bargaining deal. Players have been preparing to demand a wide range of expensive privileges, such as higher salaries, charter flights, larger rosters, increased housing allowances, and help with childcare. They plan to use the league's recent growth as justification for their demands. But what would happen if team owners could look to the next 2 weeks and say, "Look, nobody watches our games without Caitlin Clark. Attendance dropped by 80%. Our TV ratings drop. How exactly are we going to pay you millions of dollars when our entire business depends on a single player who could get hurt at any time?" Right now, players are panicking over that terrible circumstance. They used leverage in these discussions. They thought they could prove they should be paid far more by citing record TV ratings, sold-out venues, and increased product sales. But if the next 2 weeks show that Caitlin Clark alone was responsible for all of that accomplishment, their influence completely disappears. Let's be honest about what the stats on viewing will show. Games often have between 1.5 and 2 million spectators when Caitlin Clark performs. When she doesn't play, and we're talking about games with other famous players, the numbers drop to maybe 400,000 viewers on a good day. That isn't sustainable growth. One player is carrying the weight of an entire league on her shoulders. The attendance numbers are far more harmful. Venues with 17,000 seats are completely booked for the Indiana Fever games. It is challenging to fill venues with 8,000 seats for other WNBA games. When normally empty venues suddenly fill up, tickets for Caitlin Clark's trips to rival cities triple. When she is removed from the picture, the startlingly low attendance figures reappear. This poses a significant obstacle for players who want to negotiate from a position of strength. How can you expect million-dollar payments when your league depends entirely on one person? How can you defend lavish hotels and charter flights when the removal of one player results in a 70% decrease in revenue? The smart money claims that team owners are secretly hoping that during these 2 weeks, attendance and viewership will decline. They want concrete proof that Caitlin Clark is the only reason for the league's recent success. This gives them all the resources they require to negotiate contracts with meager pay and benefits. Think about it from a business perspective. If you're a team owner and you know that your whole revenue stream depends on one player who could be hurt, retire, or leave at any time, are you going to commit to paying every player like superstars? Of course not. You will protect your investment and cut costs until you can locate new sources of revenue. The other major issue is sustainability. Even if WNBA players get the salary increases they want, what will happen when Caitlin Clark eventually retires? What would happen if she suffered a career-ending injury? The league's entire financial system would collapse and teams would be compelled to pay outrageous wages they cannot afford. Because of this, several commentators contend that WNBA players should sincerely hope Caitlin Clark stays healthy and productive for as long as possible. Her performance has a direct bearing on their financial future. If she flames out, keeps getting hurt, or decides to play somewhere else, everyone else's earning potential is lost. However, this is where things start to become really interesting. Players may argue during negotiations that because the league is so dependent on one player, they ought to receive a higher salary. They can contend that, in light of the potential loss of Caitlin Clark, it is even more important to nurture other stars and invest in other players. That is a risky argument too, because it admits that the current growth is unsustainable. Aside from Caitlin Clark, there aren't many real draws in the WNBA. Despite her popularity, Paige Becker's audience may be only half that of Caitlin Clark. Angel Reese is more of a celebrity than a basketball star. Rather than her on-court performance, people are more interested in her drama and social media presence. Even if they are talented, players like Sabrina, Breanna Stewart, and A.A. Wilson don't significantly affect television ratings or ticket sales. Without Caitlin Clark, the Seattle Storm, Las Vegas Aces, and New York Liberty won't be able to fill stadiums or draw large television audiences, even if they have outstanding seasons. This absence of star power gives team owners even more negotiating leverage when it comes to contracts. They may contend that there is no justification for players to get huge salary increases because most of them don't significantly contribute to the league's revenue growth. This is the realistic reality of professional athletics, notwithstanding its harshness. The timing of this injury is particularly terrible because it happens right before the most important contract negotiations in WNBA history. The players plan to use this season's performance as their primary argument for higher compensation. But if the next 2 weeks demonstrate that one player was the only reason for the success, then logic completely falls apart. It is also necessary to consider the psychological repercussions. Players in the WNBA have been relishing the league's recent success because they think they are finally getting the recognition and attention they deserve. But it serves as a somber reminder of how quickly everything can fall apart when one player is injured. It reminds them that they might not have as much negotiation leverage as they thought. Another factor that players need to consider is the financial realities of WNBA teams. After years of losing money, most franchisees have just recently started to make money. Club owners, however, will be very cautious about making long-term financial commitments due to an increase in interest if that interest is solely based on Caitlin Clark. In the end, this injury might benefit team owners strategically. It gives them concrete data to utilize in conversations and forces everyone to confront the disturbing truth of the league's financial structure. They might argue that until the WNBA produces some true stars, they can't pay players like superstars. In the next 2 weeks, the future of WNBA earnings will be determined. If games without Caitlin Clark garner reasonable attendance and ratings, players might still have some negotiating power. However, if the numbers drop as most analysts predict, athletes will be in a terrible situation when contract discussions begin. The issue is further compounded by the fact that Caitlin Clark herself isn't making nearly what the league values her. Her rookie contract pays her a modest percentage of what male athletes with similar impact earn. However, because of the salary system, other players have profited from her prominence without necessarily contributing to it. Intriguingly, Caitlin Clark's injury might hurt other players' earning potential more than it hurts her own. While other players depended on the league's expansion to bolster their wage demands, she already has a contract. If that growth is not sustainable, their negotiation position deteriorates considerably. This raises the more fundamental question of whether the WNBA will always depend on one outstanding player to govern the entire organization, or if it can ever grow into a multi-star league that is genuinely stable. The latter seems to be the situation right now, which makes long-term financial planning very difficult for team owners and players alike. This injury is the culmination of their biggest dread at the worst possible moment for WNBA players. They had to grapple with the idea that their leverage had completely disappeared just as they were about to land contracts that may change their lives. Over the next 2 weeks, they will negotiate from a position of strength or weakness, and early indications suggest the latter. Caitlin Clark's injury exposed the WNBA's worst weakness at the worst possible time. In their future contracts, players might have to accept significantly less than the millions they had hoped for. In the next 2 weeks, women's basketball's financial future will be determined. What do you think will occur next? Click like and subscribe for more WNBA financial analysis.